Assalamualaikum everyone. Today we're going to be doing phosphorus and potassium that are major minerals that are required more than 100 grams in a body. Firstly, we'll look at the objectives of our presentation today. By the end of the chapter, you'll be able to understand and describe roles of phosphorus in the body, absorption and excretion of phosphorus, recommendations and intakes of phosphorus, deficiency and toxicity of phosphorus. Phosphorus is the second most abundant mineral in the body after calcium, as calcium and phosphorus both are part of our bone structure. Phosphorus is the primary intracellular A9. Intracellular means inside the cells, and A9 means that it is a negatively charged ion. In addition, phosphorus is important in bone metabolism, formation of the bones, and 80% of it is found in the bones. About 85% of it is found combined with calcium in the hydroxyapatite crystals of bones and teeth. Normal level of serum phosphorus are between 2.4. The phosphorus is found not only in bones and teeth, but in also in all body cells as part of the major buffer system. Phosphorus is also part of DNA and RNA that are responsible for transfer of genetic material and is therefore necessary for all growth in the body. Phosphorus assists in energy metabolism. Large amounts of free energy are released when the phosphate bonds in the ATP adenosine triphosphate are split. That are the energy yielding compounds. This compound uses three phosphate groups to work. Many enzymes and B vitamins become active only when phosphate group is attached to them. Phospholipids provide stability to lipoproteins and vehicles that help to transport lipids in the blood. Phospholipids are also major structural components of cell membranes where they control the transport of nutrients into and out of the cells. They help the cell transfer nutrients inside and outside of the cell because some nutrients that are fat soluble cannot go through the water soluble cell wall. Some proteins, such as casein in milk, and contain phosphorus as part of their structures, phosphoproteins. Phosphorus absorption is dependent on serum levels and vitamin D status. Around 80% of phosphorus intake is absorbed in the small bowel when hypophosphatemia is present, that is, lack of phosphate in blood. The kidney is the major site of phosphorus excretion and regulates phosphorus absorption based on parathyroid hormone and acid-base status. Phosphorus decreases when vitamin D deficiency occurs with certain medications that bind phosphorus, certain antacids and phosphate binders used in patients with chronic kidney disease. Recommendations and intakes. Because phosphorus is commonly found in almost all foods, dietary deficiencies are unlikely. Foods rich in proteins such as meat, poultry, fish, milk, and cheese are the best sources of phosphorus. Many processed foods and soft drinks contain phosphate-based additives. Phosphate toxicity is rare and usually reflects a significant problem such as kidney failure. So it is very unlikely for the body to be deficient in phosphorus and have toxicity of phosphorus because usually the body maintains an equilibrium in the body. Still, phosphorus intakes can be excessive, creating disruptions in normal hormonal functions that contribute to kidney failure, heart failure, and bone loss. High intakes of phosphorus are not common when diets are based mostly on fresh foods but can become excessive when processed foods take the center stage. If someone is consuming high amounts of processed foods, then there can be a deficiency of phosphorus. The recommended daily allowance for adults is 700 milligrams per day. A upper limit of 4,000 milligram has been established. If you consume more than that, it is likely that you will develop a toxicity. This chart over here describes the good and the excellent sources of phosphorus. As you can see, in the white are the best sources, and that are the milk, yogurt, cheddar cheese, cottage cheese. And after that, the ones in the browns and the reds are the sunflower seeds, peanut butter, and pinto seeds. And in the red are the meat group. Deficiency symptoms. Dietary deficiency rarely occurs, but some drugs can bind with phosphorus, making it unavailable and resulting in bone loss that is characterized by muscular weakness and bone pain. Toxicity symptoms. If there is excess of phosphorus in the diet, calcification of non-skeletal tissues, particularly the kidneys. The calcium will start depositing on the soft tissues. Now we are going to do potassium. Potassium is also a major mineral and work in antagonism with sodium. Yeah, this means that it works with sodium to regulate the blood pressure. By the end of the chapter, you will be able to understand and describe roles of potassium in the body, absorption and excretion, recommendations and upper limit. Potassium and hypertension will also be discussed. Deficiency and toxicity of potassium. Approximately 98% of potassium is found in the intracellular fluid. Potassium is the major cation, positively charged ion of intracellular fluid. The normal serum potassium concentration is 3.5 to 5 milliequivalents per liter. So it is quite in a very small amount in the blood. Maintaining fluid balance. The potassium maintains the fluid balance with sodium, electrolyte balance, that is a balance of the electrically charged ions in the blood, and cell integrity. During nerve transmissions and muscle contractions, potassium and sodium briefly trade places across the cell membrane. Means that sodium comes into the cell and potassium moves out, and potassium afterwards the cell quickly pumps them back into place. Controlling potassium distribution is a high priority for the body because it affects many aspects of homeostasis, including a steady heartbeat. If there's a deficiency of potassium in the body, nerve transmissions, muscle contractions will not be effectively maintained, and that is why heart can stop. Potassium is absorbed readily from the small intestine. Approximately 80 to 90% of ingested potassium is excreted in the urine. The remainder is lost in the feces. The kidneys maintain normal serum levels through their ability to filter, reabsorb, and excrete potassium under the influence of aldosterone. So, the hormones that control the absorption, excretion, and maintenance of balance of sodium also control the balance of potassium. In case of hypokalemia, that is deficiency of potassium in the blood, aldosterone secretions are lower and the kidney shifts to reabsorb potassium and excrete more sodium. Now we will have a look at the recommendations and intakes. Potassium is abundant in all living cells because cells remain intact unless foods are processed. The richest sources of potassium are fresh foods. To meet the adequate intake of potassium, most people need to increase their daily intake of fruits and vegetables, as it is found in all cells. And cells break down during processing procedures like cooking and freezing. Significant sources are all the fresh foods, meats, milk, fruits, vegetables, grains, and legumes. In contrast, most processed foods such as canned vegetables, ready to eat cereals, and processed meats contain less potassium and more sodium. This chart over here describes the rich and excellent sources of potassium. We have a look over here in the first in the greens is broccoli, carrots, potato, and tomato juice. After that, in the purple, we have banana, orange, and strawberries, watermelon, milk, cheddar cheese, and you can have a look. So it is widely distributed in foods. The role of potassium in controlling the blood pressure. Diets low in potassium, especially when combined with high sodium intakes, raise the blood pressure and increase the risk of death from heart disease. In contrast, high potassium intakes, especially when combined with low sodium intakes, appear to both prevent and correct hypertension. The DASH eating pattern described earlier is used to lower blood pressure and emphasizes potassium rich foods such as fruits and vegetables. Potassium rich fruits and vegetables also appear to reduce the risk of strokes and heart attacks, more so that can be explained by reduction in blood pressure alone. So, the DASH eating pattern, dietary approaches to stop hypertension that we have discussed in the topic of sodium, will also help in is also rich in potassium. In case there is a deficiency on the diet, potassium is deficiency is characterized by an increase in blood pressure, formation of kidney stones, and bone turnover. Bone turnover means that bones, calcium, and phosphorus from the bones will be lost. As deficiency progresses, symptoms include irregular heartbeats, muscle weakness, and glucose intolerance. All these deficiencies are going to occur because of its function in nerve transmission and muscle contraction. When hypo is less than 3 milliequivalents per liter, symptoms are more apparent and critical. The lower limit was 3.5, but if it's less than that, hypokalemia means deficiency of potassium. Symptoms of hypokalemia include muscle weakness, cramping in the extremities, vomiting, and weakness. Hypokalemia is a low level of potassium in the blood serum. Clinically, hypokalemia occurs with large volume losses of gastrointestinal fluids that contain potassium. And how is that going to occur? Due to vomiting. Insulin delivery. In diabetes, when insulin is injected in the blood, excessive losses through the urine caused by certain medications like diuretics. Diuretics are medicines that increase the urination to lower the blood pressure, but it has a side effect that more potassium will be lost. And diabetic ketoacidosis. In diabetics, when enough glucose is not present for the cell breaks down the lipids for energy and ketone bodies are formed, and excessive accumulation of ketones in the body is called ketoacidosis. Guidelines exist for the treatment of hypokalemia, oral or intravenous medications, and are adjusted in renal impairment because potassium is excreted by the kidneys. Potassium toxicity. Potassium toxicity does not result from overeating foods high in potassium. Therefore, a UL has not been set. It can result from overconsumption of potassium salts or supplements, including some energy fitness shakes, and from certain diseases or treatments. Given more potassium than the body needs, the kidneys accelerate the excretion. If potassium is injected directly into a vein, however, it can stop the heart. So the body tries to maintain its equilibrium as much as possible, and but if there is excessive intake, it can result in heart failure. Hyperkalemia. is an elevated level of potassium in the blood. Levels above 5.5 is defined as hyperkalemia. It can be critical, especially when levels exceed 6.5 milliequivalents. Symptoms are muscle weakness, paralysis, respiratory failure, arrhythmias, and ECG changes. Arrhythmia means irregular heartbeat. What can be the causes of hyperkalemia? Because we cannot ingest too much of potassium. Hemolysis causing falsely elevated laboratory reserves. Hemolysis means breakdowns of the red blood cells. The breakdown of red blood cells can be because of some underlying disease, thalassemia, or the dengue fever. Kidney disease impairing the potassium excretion. In case of some kidney disease, potassium is not being excreted as being accumulated in the blood. Medications such as potassium sparing diuretics, gastrointestinal hemorrhage, if there is some hemorrhage in the GI tract, catabolism, metabolic acidosis, both occur in the diabetes. Overzealous, it means that huge amount of potassium is consumed. But now we are going to review and summarize the potassium. Potassium is an electrolyte that maintains fluid balance. Primary cation, positively charged ion in the cell, found in fresh fruits and vegetables. Adults, adequate intake is 4700 milligrams per day. It uh, assists in nerve impulse transmission and muscle contraction. The deficiency symptoms can be irregular heartbeat, muscular weakness, and glucose intolerance. Toxicity, in case of toxicity, muscular weakness and vomiting, and if given in a vein, can stop the heart. And all the fresh fruits and vegetables, meats, grains, and legumes are good sources of potassium. So I will be closing over here, and we're going to continue it from in the next class, inshallah. Okay, ji. Allah Hafiz. I'm closing it now.